What's going on, everyone? This is Zach back here with another 2022 NFL team preview video. And this is our final team of 2022 that we are covering. Every single team we've covered up until now, I'm going to be talking about the Cleveland Browns today. But, we did all 31 NFL teams. There's a playlist on YouTube, 2022 NFL season previews, and you can find your team if you want to watch your team's video. But for Browns fans especially, I've got this episode prepared for you guys. And we're going to look at, obviously, some major offseason headlines for the Browns, and I'm going to give my thoughts on how I think their season is going to go. So the elephant in the room, obviously, has to be Deshaun Watson when you talk about the Browns. This was a team that, at the start of the offseason, had a big question at quarterback if they were going to extend Baker Mayfield's contract. Was he going to end up being a franchise tag later on? Could they work out a new deal? That never ended up happening. He never signed a long-term contract with the Browns. They just weren't agreeing on terms. Baker had a pretty bad season last year. Obviously, he feels like the injuries played a part of it. The team just looked at their performance overall, and it wasn't very good, so they didn't reward him with a contract. And then they began to flirt with Deshaun Watson. So there were a few teams that were in the Watson sweepstakes. The Browns were one of them when, after Deshaun's Watson wasn't going to be going to prison, essentially. He wasn't criminally charged. This is when the trade rumors really started to ramp up, and then teams got serious with their offers. But it looked like the Browns were out of it. However, because they were even in it in the first place, it made Mayfield upset that they were looking at Watson instead of him, and then ultimately they jump back in the sweepstakes, offer the best deal to Houston, and Houston trades Deshaun Watson to the Browns. So that was the first part of this saga, and then the second part was obviously, what's his suspension going to be? We know he's on the Browns now, but, everybody knew he was getting suspended. It was a matter of how many games. Would it be a full season? All this sort of stuff, indefinite. The Browns did not know his suspension when they gave him that crazy record-setting contract. So Deshaun Watson gets a new contract, tear up his old one, replaces it with a Cleveland one, all guaranteed money. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but I know it was the most any quarterback's making. So obviously the Browns had faith in Watson that he either wasn't going to be suspended very long, he was part of their long-term plans, or just that he was really good and his talent superseded all the off-the-field, negativity that would be associated with the Browns. So they definitely took a real risk here, because I think they were still a good team even with Mayfield, and they would have competed in the playoffs, for the playoffs at least, I think, if they had stuck with Mayfield. But they opted to go this route, and then all the suspension drama up until just a few weeks ago, where after the appeal, it's obviously 11 games. So the season is really kind of going to be, this is unlike any other team, but we're really going to split the Brown season in half. The first 11 games with Jacoby Brissett or other, they've made some QB moves, but the last half, those last 6 games are going to be Watson's for sure. I'd be shocked if he didn't play in those last 6 when he comes back from suspension. So obviously, huge story NFL league-wide with Deshaun Watson going to the Browns. But in addition to that, they had other offensive changes. They brought in Amari Cooper for what was essentially nothing, just a late-round draft pick to bring in Amari Cooper from the Cowboys. And he essentially replaced Jarvis Landry, who left to go to the New Orleans Saints this offseason. So the Browns wide receiver room from the top has seen a huge change from when it did last year with Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, the two LSU wide receivers now to Amari Cooper. Personally, I don't. While I can't fault the move because it costs so little to get Amari Cooper, I don't view this as. I don't view him as an elite receiver, and I also don't view their receiver room in general as an elite receiving room. This is still, I think, especially without Watson, going to be a run-first team. They've got a plethora of running backs, and I think they're really going to use them to scrape by because their wide receiver room, I think, is lacking. With Amari Cooper, he's a good receiver, but if you really break down the numbers, he's very good indoors and very bad outdoors. It's one of those weird cases where he doesn't, play well outdoors, which is kind of interesting. But Cleveland obviously plays half their games outdoors to begin with, and then they also play in the AFC North. So I just don't think he's going to have that much success with the Browns, in all honesty. And then another sort of sneaky headline with the Browns, in my opinion, looking at the roster from top to bottom, is the Browns GM Andrew Berry's been pretty high on his drafts. The Browns, now that we know, this is one of the few episodes where we know the final 53 for these teams. Most of these team previews were done during training camp, but for the Browns, we know their final 53, and they are, without doubt, high on their draft picks. They kept all of their draft picks from this year's draft on the active roster, and also every draft pick from last year. So, that's, in today's NFL, that's honestly a surprising thing, in my opinion. It's not a guarantee for these late round picks to still be on the roster. Granted, a lot of them aren't starting in starting roles, but there are a few that are. And whether it's also been free agents that Andrew Berry's brought in, they haven't really made a lot of changes other than the fact, obviously, at quarterback, he wasn't a part of the Mayfield draft, so it's not really his guy. And then Deshaun Watson he brings in, but really other than that, not too many major changes for the Browns. They're kind of sticking with their team. They feel like they've drafted well, and now it's time to see if those guys actually produce or not. I think that's going to be the biggest factor for Cleveland's season. Are their drafts going to hit? Because there's going to be a lot of rookie, second-year, third-year players that were drafted by the team. It's really going to be up to them how successful their season is. And then looking at their schedule here, like I said, you got to break this down. First 11, that's why I put that green line in the middle after the Buccaneers and before the Texans, indicating Watson's status. But their over-under is set at 8.5. Last year, their over-under was set at 10.5. They only won 8, so they were an under team last year. 8.5 to me, with as tough as the schedule is, I'm going to have to go under. I think they'll get 7 or 8, but I don't think they'll get 9 or higher. So obviously week 1's the rematch. Baker Mayfield's going to be leading the Panthers against the Browns. That's going to be real interesting to watch, I think. Kind of a fun game to watch week 1, but I don't think they win that. The Jets and Steelers are winnable games for them following week 1, and the Falcons too. But then it gets much more difficult. They play a bunch of playoff teams or near playoff teams, from the Chargers through the Buccaneers. That's a brutal stretch. And then when Watson comes back, it's not super easy either. They've got, Texans. I think they should be able to win that, but that's going to be the Watson revenge rematch game. And then Bengals, Ravens, Saints, those will be tough. Commanders, Steelers to wrap things up. So I just think there's too much negativity around the team. I think, and I know Cleveland Browns fans will probably comment like Browns versus the world or something like that. Every team says that. It's us against the world. It isn't. Just going to say it. It's not. But the world's got bigger problems than the Cleveland Browns. But I don't know why I said that. But it just kind of triggers me when I see all these teams say us against the world. Um, I just think too much negativity around this team. I'm still high on a lot of the talent, and I think in the future it definitely could be a good team if Watson gets back to how he was playing with Houston. If he returns and plays like he did with the Texans, I think this Browns team is set up potentially to be good in the future. But this season, with him missing all that time, him coming back mid-season, there's going to be so much rust there when he comes back. Jacoby Brissett inspires no confidence at all. But so I'm going to have to go under on this. Sorry, Browns fans. But anyways, I guess you guys aren't really excited about the season anyways from what I've seen on Twitter. You're more so looking forward to next year anyways. So with that being said, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this and enjoyed our entire series of these 2022 NFL team previews. And we've got more content on the way. Don't be afraid. Still doing the weekly podcast. Doing the lock board is making it a return for its third season. So we'll share details when that comes out. And then also just miscellaneous other videos. Connor's got a hockey series that's coming out before the regular season starts, similar to this, or more similar to our college football series previews. But yeah, hopefully you guys have enjoyed these. And until next time, remember, be clutch.